to everyone in that restaurant. The other servers weaving between tables, the hostess checking her clipboard, the couples celebrating anniversaries with overpriced Pinot Noir. I was just the new girl. The one who kept forgetting which table had ordered the gluten-free pasta. The one management had put on the floor 3 weeks too early because 2 people quit the same weekend. That's what they saw. What they didn't see was that I'd been watching the man at table 12 for 47 minutes. He came in at 7:15 with his wife. They were meeting her parents. That much I'd gathered from the way the older couple was already seated, already halfway through a bottle of Bordeaux, already performing the kind of easy comfort that said, "This is our place, we chose it." We set the terms. The wife sat between her husband and her mother, and she kept touching the stem of her wine glass without drinking from it. A nervous habit. I recognized him because my own mother does the same thing. The husband was the reason I was here. His name was Theodore Crane. Theo, to people who thought they knew him. In certain circles in Toronto, the kind that don't make the news, the kind that settle things in back offices and golf club parking lots. He was something else entirely. I'd spent 8 months getting close enough to walk into this restaurant with a notepad and a smile. 8 months learning which shifts the hostess worked, which server had a habit of calling in sick on Fridays. How to make myself useful, how to make myself invisible. I was 26 years old and I was very good at both. The problem was that the evening wasn't going the way it was supposed to. I'd expected dinner, maybe 2 hours. I had a contact waiting 3 blocks east, a cell phone in my locker with a very specific number pre-dialed. What I hadn't expected was the way Theo's father-in-law kept leaning forward across the table, voice low, shoulders angled away from his daughter. The way Theo's expression stayed perfectly, carefully neutral through whatever was being said. A man like him didn't let things show. I'd learned that much. But I'd also learned to watch hands. His right hand was flat on the table. That was control. That was I am not going to react. The kind of stillness that isn't calm. It's the moment before something breaks. I brought the breadbasket to table 11. I refilled water at table 9. I moved the way you move when you need to be close to something without looking like you're trying to be close to it. When I finally passed close enough to table 12, I caught 3 words from the father-in-law. Already been arranged. My stomach dropped. Not because of what those words meant to my case, because of what they meant to the woman sitting across from him, absently straightening the edge of her placemat, completely unaware that the 2 men in her life were speaking about her like she was a line item on a balance sheet. I went back to the service station and stood very still for a moment. I had a job to do. I had 8 months of work, a file I'd built piece by piece, a reason I'd taken this assignment that had nothing to do with Theodore Crane personally, and everything to do with what he was connected to. I had a protocol, a chain of command, a contact 3 blocks east. I also had a choice. My name is Nadia, and I want to be clear about something before I tell you the rest of this. I'm not a hero. I'm not someone who does the right thing naturally. I'm someone who does the necessary thing efficiently, and then spends 3 days afterward wondering if those 2 things were the same. I grew up in Mississauga, the kind of suburb that was close enough to Toronto to make you feel like things were happening nearby, but far enough that you were always watching them from a distance. My mother worked the front desk at a dental office for 22 years. My father was a transit driver who read history books on his days off and had opinions about the War of 1812 that he'd share with anyone who held still long enough. We were ordinary in the way I later understood was actually a privilege. Though I didn't know that at 18 when ordinary felt like the worst thing you could be. I left for university and then didn't come back. Not really. Not in the way you come back to a place that still holds the shape of you. I found work that suited something in me I couldn't name then, and still can't name cleanly. Something that wanted to be in the spaces where real things happened. Not performing on a stage, but standing in the wings. Watching what people did when they thought no one was watching. That evening, at that restaurant, with Theo Crane's father-in-law, leaning across a white tablecloth with the casual confidence of a man who'd never once been told no, I understood something. Someone was watching, and that someone was me. I didn't have much time. I knew from the body language that dinner was wrapping up. The wife, her name was Charlotte. I'd learned that from a reservation history, Mr. and Mrs. T. Crane, party of 4. Charlotte had stopped touching her wine glass and started touching her napkin instead. That's a different kind of nervous. That's I want to leave. Theo had signaled for the bill 11 minutes ago, and the way the father-in-law kept talking, kept leaning in, I could see the muscle in Theo's jaw doing something that his face refused to do. He was angry. Not the hot kind. The cold kind, which is worse. The bill came. Cards went down. The kind of moment where you're technically done but no one has moved yet. I had a window of maybe 4 minutes. I picked up the dessert menu holder from the service station. A prop. Something to be holding. And I walked to table 12. I set the holder down on the edge of the table near Theo's elbow, and as I leaned in to adjust it, I turned my head just enough so my voice wouldn't carry to the other side of the table. "Mr. Crane," I said quietly. Just his name. Not yet. He didn't move. Didn't look at me. I felt his attention shift the way you feel a change in air pressure before it rains. Not visible. Just there. "There's someone outside," I said. "North side. Dark blue Suburban, no plates. It's been there since 7. 2 people in the front. They're not waiting for a valet." A pause that lasted less than a second. "Your wife needs to go out the kitchen exit," I said. "Staff door on the east side of the building. Tell her now, before anyone moves." I straightened up, picked up the dessert menu holder, walked back toward the service station, as though I'd simply forgotten something. I didn't look back. I want to tell you what he did, but first, I need to tell you what he didn't do. He didn't look at me. He didn't stand up. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't do anything that would shift the energy at that table in a way the other 3 people would notice. What he did was laugh. He laughed at something his father-in-law said. The kind of short, genuine-seeming laugh that says, "You got me." And then he said something to Charlotte quietly, the way husbands say things to wives in public when they want privacy, without making it obvious they need it. She nodded once. The smile she gave her parents was practiced and warm. She excused herself from the table. I watched from the corner of my eye as she walked, not toward the restrooms, which were near the front entrance, but toward the back of the restaurant, toward the bar, which was a direction that didn't look like the kitchen, but could become the kitchen if someone was guiding her. I met her just past the bar. She was shorter than she'd looked sitting down. Mid-30s, the kind of pretty that comes with knowing exactly what suits you, and eyes that were doing quick math on the situation the second she saw me waiting for her. "This way," I said. She followed without asking why, which told me something about her. Either she trusted her husband's instincts completely, or she'd already suspected something was wrong tonight, and she'd just been waiting for confirmation. Looking at her face, I thought it was probably both. I took her through the kitchen, past the line cooks who'd seen enough of Toronto's restaurant industry to not be surprised by anything, and out the staff exit on the east side. The alley smelled like a dumpster and damp November concrete. A black car was idling at the far end. A man I recognized from my file was standing beside it. He was one of Theo's, not mine. So Theo had already made a call. In the time between my walking away from the table and Charlotte reaching the kitchen exit, he had reached someone, which meant he'd already known something was off about tonight. My warning had just told him when. Charlotte looked at the car, looked at me. "Who are you?" she asked. Not afraid, just wanting to know. "I work here," I said, which was technically true. That's not what I asked. I looked at her for a moment. "You should go. He'll find you. He knows where." She held my gaze for another 2 seconds. Then she nodded, pulled her coat tighter against the cold, and walked toward the car. I went back inside. What happened at table 12 in the next 20 minutes? I only know part of it from being in the room, and part of it from things I pieced together afterward. Theo returned to the table. He told Charlotte's parents that she'd gotten a headache and had gone home. He said it with the easy confidence of a man lying to people he's assessed and found wanting. He finished the conversation. He was gracious. He was warm. He was, I understood, watching him. A man who'd built his entire survival on knowing exactly how much to show. What I know that I didn't know then. Charlotte's father had, over the course of the past 3 months, accumulated a debt to a specific set of people, the kind of people whose debts don't get settled with payment plans. He'd made a decision, a terrible, cowardly, unforgivable decision the kind that happens when someone has run out of options and starts looking at the people around them as potential currency. He'd offered Charlotte, not violently. That's not how it works. Not a threat, not a transaction with an envelope and a handshake. Something more bureaucratic, and therefore somehow worse. An agreement that Charlotte's husband would be delivered to a location, that the circumstances would be such that Theo would be grateful to Charlotte's father for helping him out of a situation, and that this gratitude would manifest in a very specific financial way that would clear a very specific debt. Theo, I learned much later, had suspected something was building for several weeks. He'd noticed small things, a shift in how his father-in-law's calls were timed, a meeting that was canceled without a real reason. He'd told Charlotte none of this, which I think was a mistake, and I think she thought so too when she learned the whole of it. But that's their marriage and their accounting of it, and not really my place. What was my place was the woman at table 12 who kept touching her napkin. That night, after my shift ended, I walked to the parking garage on Richmond Street and sat in my car for a long time without starting it. I had deviated from protocol. I hadn't notified my contact before acting. I'd made a judgment call based on information I wasn't supposed to have been building in the first place. The kind of thing that could compromise a case I'd spent months constructing. I also thought about Charlotte in that alley, pulling her coat tight, asking, "Who are you?" not because she was afraid, but because she was a person who wanted to understand what was happening to her. I called my contact at 11:14 p.m. He was not pleased. He used the word unauthorized 4 times in 6 minutes. He told me I had put 8 months of work at risk. He told me the chain of command existed for a reason. He wasn't wrong about any of it. When he finished, I said, "There were 2 people in a dark blue Suburban on the north side with no plates. If I'd made the call and waited for authorization, how long before she was in that car?" A silence. "Go home," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." Tomorrow was a longer conversation, and then there were more conversations, and a review, and a process I won't detail, because it's tedious and institutional and ultimately beside the point. The point is that I was not let go. The point is that the work I'd spent 8 months building didn't collapse. It shifted, became something different, went in a direction I hadn't originally intended, which is how the most important things usually go. The point is that Theo Crane, whatever else he was a man who looked at the people around him and made decisions about who was worth protecting. I understand why some people find that quality compelling in someone like him. I understand why other people find it complicated. I found it, mostly, useful. 6 weeks after the night at the restaurant, I was doing a morning shift at a completely different location. I'd been reassigned for obvious reasons. When Charlotte Crane walked in, she was alone. She sat in my section, which couldn't have been an accident, which meant she'd either asked or done her own version of what I'd done. Watching, noting patterns, choosing her moment, she ordered a coffee. Black. She waited until I came back with it before she spoke. "I know you're not just a server," she said. "I'm a server right now," I said. "Fair." She wrapped both hands around the mug. "I want to know what you know about my father." I looked at her. "That's not a conversation I can have." "I know." She met my eyes. "I'm asking anyway." There's a specific kind of courage in asking for something you know you probably won't get. It's not recklessness. It's not naivety. It's a clear-eyed decision that the answer matters enough to absorb the discomfort of the asking. I sat down across from her, just for a moment, just long enough to say, quietly, "Your father made choices because he was desperate. That doesn't excuse them. It also doesn't mean you were the only thing he had left to offer. It means he stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a solution. Those are not the same failure, but they both come from the same place." She was quiet for a moment. "He called me last week," she said. "Left a voicemail. He said he was sorry and that he'd explain everything." "Are you going to call him back?" She looked down at her coffee. "I don't know yet." I understood that. The honest answer is almost always "I don't know yet," and the people who've made up their minds hard too quickly are usually protecting themselves from sitting with the hostage. "Whatever you decide," I said, "make sure it's your decision. Not his. Not your husband's. Yours." She looked up at that. Something shifted in her expression. Not relief, exactly. but the particular recognition of a person who has been told something they already knew but needed to hear out loud. "You're not really just a server," she said again. "No," I said, "but I make decent coffee." I think about that case more than I probably should. Not the parts I usually think about in this line of work. Not the 8 months of careful positioning. Not the outcome and whether it went the direction we'd intended. Not the review and the 4 uses of the word unauthorized. I think about the breadbasket I was carrying when I first realized something was wrong. The specific weight of a prop when you're using it to get close to something true. I think about Charlotte's voice in that alley. Not afraid. Just wanting to understand. I think about what it means to be in a room full of people who see one thing and know something different. How long you can do that before the 2 versions of yourself, the one they see and the one that's watching, stop being manageable as separate things. I don't have a clean answer to that. I don't think clean answers are really available in the spaces I work in. What I do have is this. That night, 4 minutes was enough. And sometimes that's the whole of what you can ask for. The city kept going. The restaurant filled up the next evening with new people celebrating new things. And the table 12 was set again with white linen and good glasses, and no one who sat down there knew anything about what the table had held the week before. That's how it works. The surface resets. Underneath is where everything stays.